Hello and welcome back to the 10th lesson of the Year 2 Theory and Methods section of this online series. Hopefully you're familiar with this diagram by now and comfortable to fill in the blank boxes. If not, then please go back to at least lesson 8 for a reminder. When looking at Year 2 Theory and Methods, you may have noticed a common theme in the characteristics of the theorists we have studied thus far. Hence, feminists have coined the word male stream to describe the type of sociology that concentrates on men, is mostly carried out by men, and then assumes that its findings can be applied to women as well. We have and will continue to see examples of this, particularly when studying crime and deviance. To attempt to redress some of this imbalance, we will look at our next theory. Press pause as you add this as your title for this section, either written on paper or typed on a computer. A-level Sociology, Theory and Methods for Paper 1 and Paper 3, subtitle Feminism. You need to know some of the main types of feminist theory, applications and evaluation points. To put this into context, I'll give you some examples and issues. You don't necessarily have to make a note of these first ones, but this timeline is interesting as it shows how women's rights have changed over time. Starting in the 1890s, all of the countries in orange gave women the right to vote. Given this, it's perhaps not surprising that the founders of sociology were referred to as the founding fathers. Emily Davison made history when she threw herself in front of the King's Horse at Epsom Derby to protest against women's suffrage. She died in hospital on the 8th of June 1913 amid public condemnation. The Queen Mother sent her apologies to the jockey that his race had been interrupted by a brutal lunatic woman demanding, of all crazy things, the vote. The timeline of women's rights to vote can be seen as gradually improving over time. Here we have the 1920s, the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and from the year 2000. Before we look at the specific examples, try to think of as many issues or concerns that a feminist might have today. You don't have to restrict yourself to this country. The first issue that modern feminists will draw attention to is the division of domestic labour. Recap from families and households. What were some of the disparities between men and women when it came to things like chores around the house? Who did what? How long did it take? What studies can you recall to back up these claims? Make a note of these now by revisiting your families and households notes and adding them to general feminist concerns. A second issue a modern feminist will point to is the portrayal of women in the media. For example, women are given unrealistic images of how they could or should look. This is an albeit slightly tongue-in-cheek interpretation of how the media socialises into gendered roles and expectations. Magazine front covers often include stereotypical representations of women and are different to the typical representations of men. The glass ceiling is a useful concept when discussing feminist views of societies today, and you should press pause when you make a note of this now. Feminists discuss this as an example of the inequality between men and women, with men overrepresented in certain jobs and sectors. Feminists argue that women, when compared to men, face a number of social inequalities, as seen here, including higher rates of morbidity, which refers to sickness or ill health. It should be noted, however, that women live longer than men. And the fifth issue, another one we've looked at previously in families and households, is the issue of domestic violence. Whilst we might consider the previous 5 to be Western concerns, a global feminist may also consider issues such as this. More details can be found in the links I've included with this lesson on Classroom. And these sorts of issues are used for examples that a feminist would use to illustrate the need to study the world from their perspective. As discussed previously, there are different types of feminism. One of these is liberal feminism, considered to be the least extreme form. A liberal feminist is concerned about issues such as the gender pay gap and how to close it. Friday the 29th of May 1970 saw the Equal Pay Act receive royal assent in the UK, meaning employers were prohibited from paying women less than men for the same job. Although unequal pay is now illegal, the gender pay gap, that is the percentage difference between the average hourly earnings for men and women, persists. The government now requires British companies with more than 250 employees to publish their gender pay gap data. But this will not happen in 2020 because of the coronavirus pandemic. Recap. What was the difference between these two terms? Liberal feminists distinguish between these two terms and are therefore interested in the process of socialisation in determining attitudes about gender differences. Liberal feminists believe that challenging gender stereotypes will produce cultural change and gender equality will become the norm. This can be done through the media, advertising, socialisation into gender roles, female and male. Liberal feminism is an optimistic theory, very much in keeping with the Enlightenment project and its faith in progress. Radical feminism is a much more extreme version of feminist theory. Radical feminism emerged in the 1970s. Its key concept is patriarchy. They see patriarchy as universal and the primary and most fundamental form of inequality and conflict. Hence, all men oppress all women from this perspective. Their solutions are radical, Marxist feminists dismiss the liberal feminist view that women's subordination is merely the product of stereotyping or outdated attitudes. They also reject the radical feminist view that it is the result of patriarchal oppression by men. Instead, as Marxists, they see women's subordination as rooted in capitalism. Although individual men may benefit from women's subordination, the main beneficiary is capitalism. Another type of feminism is what is sometimes referred to as black feminism. These are some of the key points about black feminism, and you should make a note of this now. Black feminism is sometimes referred to as difference feminism and sometimes comes under the broader heading of intersectionality. An intersectional analysis considers all of the factors that apply to an individual in combination rather than considering each factor in isolation, something we've looked at in education. The OED Online Dictionary defines it as the complex, cumulative manner in which the effects of different forms of discrimination combine, overlap, or intersect. To break that down, it essentially means that discrimination doesn't exist in a bubble. Different kinds of prejudice can be amplified in different ways when put together. With reference to this statement, do you agree or disagree? How? Why? Can you think of any reasons to support this or reasons to criticise it? Some respondents to this survey for Sky News reported that feminism has gone far enough. And some more details of this survey can be found here. Critics of feminist theories point to statistics such as these, showing the 20 most dangerous occupations in America and the percentage who are male. For further information about feminism, please see the Google Doc that I've linked to this lesson via Classroom, the other links and activities. As well as directly criticising theories, we can also criticise them via alternative theories. We have now looked at all of the main sociological theories that can be classified as broadly structural, meaning that our next stop will be to look at the other side of the debate, and that is the broader heading of social action theories.